All right, character sheets are out, backstory's in. Let's go. Characters are the lifeblood of your story. And without characters that readers fall in love with, or at least enjoy, then the rest of your story falls flat because the characters are the window from which your reader experiences everything. So how can we make these characters as compelling as possible? Now, I could sit here and tell you some long list of reasons, but it all really comes down to you understanding your own characters. And that's what leads to unique voices and conflict and trauma and just so much more. So I guess the question is, how do we understand those characters? Well, let's talk about backstory and why it might not even matter. All right, so let's talk about backstory. What is the goal of sitting down and not writing your manuscript, but writing about your characters, creating that backstory? In the Writing Theory podcast, every Monday, you can check it out. Back in the very first episode, we looked at the writing routine of N.K. Jemisin, who rewrites their first chapter dozens of times, trying new characters and location and perspectives, and even short stories about characters, all before really working on the novel. And I call this exploratory writing, and it's a concept that I've really been coming around to as of recent. Why write all of this extra stuff instead of just writing your story? Now, this mindset that I used to have, where I felt like this, was very utilitarian, is maybe the word. And now the more I think about it, it kind of feels like a very amateur-ish way of approaching writing. All of this exploratory writing helps you better understand your story, and backstory helps you understand your characters. And here's how. When you start writing, your characters could be at varying levels of development. Now, I notoriously plan my characters out very little, and then I discover them while writing. And I've seen in our Discord with hundreds of other writers just like you should totally join using the link below, that people will fill out entire character sheets that answer questions like, what's their primary yearning? What's their habits and hobbies? Look, if you like filling out character sheets, then the backstory and what we're about to talk about might be a better solution to understanding your character. And it also kind of just helps you practice your writing. Look, there's two kinds of backstory we're talking about today: the life synopsis and the core scene. The life synopsis, the first type of backstory, is a page that we're taking from tabletop RPGs. This is a way to summarize the core concept of your character in one big block of text. Carson was born in the little village of Skibbity, Ohio. Am I gonna regret that?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
He was the son of a farmer and a bada 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 bada. He learned to hunt at a young age and yada yada yada. His village was overrun by bandits. Here's all of the important bits of this character that makes them them. And I'll be honest, this is acceptable maybe for a tabletop game, but it's nowhere near the level of detail that you need for understanding your character. It's almost like a list of bullet points, right? What are you gonna do with that? That's the same issue that we encounter when it comes to things like character sheets. It's close to having like a reference sheet for your character, and that can be helpful, but it doesn't truly help you understand your character or how to represent them on the page. There's really only one way for you to do that, and that's to write your character, to practice it. And that leads us to the real meat of the video, the core scene. The core scene. Oh my God, I just realized. I've been planning a fantasy novel for about 2 years now. Not actively planning, but sort of continuously refining, adding detail, and every now and then opening up the Scrivener file and just jotting down some ideas. And after discovering this concept of more exploratory writing, I decided to put it into action. I had a pool of different characters, all of which I thought were interesting, but I didn't quite know who should make up the main cast of characters. So I embraced the exploratory writing and I decided to write a core scene for each character. In my case, writing this kind of backstory meant writing a short story that encapsulates the defining moment for the character. Instead of a long reference sheet of who this character is, I was creating something that was purely about that character. Now, in my case, I had a celebrated general that had been sent away to war. And when he came back, he found that the king had taken our general's wife as a concubine to carry the heir of the nation, partly in a move of lust, but partly in a move to establish power and dominance over this general. What may have been a bullet point on a character sheet or a one-lined sentence of a life synopsis now became a character study. And it was all done in a narrative style, just like how this character is going to be represented in my 100,000 word novel. It gives me practice at bringing that character to life on the page in the same way that I'm going to do in my book. This would be the moment that changed that general's life forever. He leaves the kingdom and the army, and he emerges as a pirate on the seas with revenge in his heart. And now I feel wholly confident that this character is interesting enough to be a main character. And that's what the core scene really showed me. Even better, I did core scenes of these other characters, and some of them that I thought were good ideas just weren't quite there. Now, this scene helps me understand my character in a stronger way. It's still really up to me to decide whether or not this core scene should even really be included in the story itself. It could just be for me. It could be something that never makes it into my novel, but's just there to help me understand the character and represent them better. In fact, you could argue that backstory within your novel doesn't even matter. Look, as with all writing advice, append this phrase to the end, unless you do it well, right? This is art. You can kind of do it however you want. But with that in mind, consider this. Does the reader really need to know your character's backstory? Now, if it's important to the narrative, like Harry Potter, duh, of course, yes, they should know it. That's a big part of the story. But here's an example from the lovely movie Cars.
You know, I don't think anybody expected this. The rookie sensation came into the season unknown, but everyone knows him now.
Will he be the first rookie to win a Piston Cup and land down a coat?
The legend, the runner-up, and the rookie.
Now, this was just the first one that came to mind. In this movie, Lightning McQueen's past is not really a factor at all to the narrative. We don't really need to know where he came from, what his upbringing was like, how he got where he is. Most of what we get about his life before the start of this movie is this one line.
Rookie sensation came into the season unknown.
Everything else happens throughout the movement of the plot and the interaction with the characters. Now, as someone who hasn't seen all the other Cars movies, you'll have to tell me if we ever see his backstory. Sorry. So here's the thing. Good writing is invisible. That's what they always say, right? So I would hazard a guess that there are plenty of stories that I've read without even considering the fact that the backstory of the characters wasn't included. It was invisible, right? It was just such a good representation of the character, I didn't have to worry about all this backstory stuff. Maybe the author did, but the reader didn't need it. If you have any great examples of stories where we don't get the backstory of the characters, let me know. So what do you think? Does the idea of the core scene style of backstory interest you? Are you open to more exploratory writing? Do you think that character sheets are even better than this? Is backstory even needed? Let me know below, and as always, thank you for watching.